On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about two things I'm looking for each Clipper, the 11 players that are set to be in the regular rotation, starting with the star duo and going down the line. Going to be talking about that on today's Locked On Clippers.
Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, going into my 18th season as a Clipper fan. You may also know me as Dime Dropper on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me at Dime Dropper Pod on there. And of course, to subscribe to my YouTube channel where I go live after almost every LA basketball game. And of course, film vlogs when I'm at LA sporting events, and of course do NBA content at large, including NBA history content. So go give me a subscription on there. And of course, subscribe to the Locked On Clippers YouTube and answer today's question, which is, which Clipper do you think has the best chance of winning Sixth Man of the Year, if any? Obviously, the Clippers have been a breeding ground for sixth men in the past, and I think the Clippers have a couple of candidates, namely whoever comes off the bench between Reggie Jackson and John Wall and Norman Powell, who I think will have the best odds of anybody. But for today's episode, I'm going to be talking about two things I'm looking at, or I've already been looking at in the preseason. For every Clipper, the 11 men in the rotation, that's Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Ivica Zubac, Reggie Jackson, John Wall, Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, and Nico Batum. So let's start out with the big boys, Kawhi Leonard. And I've talked about him so much and so many times on this pod. But the main thing I'm looking at is his athleticism, his burst. Does he still have that? And so far in the preseason, we've seen that he has shown glimpses. Now, he hasn't fully gone past guys. And now, again, I've mentioned so many times, that's never really been his thing, as long as he's been a Clipper at least. He doesn't really have that burst to get by guys unless, they're closing out super hard or they reach or something like that. He just creates enough space and separation, and with his fundamentals and his mid-range prowess and his ability to hit contested shots, and of course his post game. And that's how he really plays. He's not a crazy face-up, even though he's added so much more wiggle to his game, but just kind of blow by you and get to the rim kind of thing. That's not really his game as much. But I'm looking for that athleticism and that burst. And I think, obviously, the Minnesota game was an encouraging sign when you saw him split the defense, get by D'Angelo Russell, and going for that one-handed dunk. You saw a little bit of burst there, and I think he already said his legs still felt a little heavy. He's still getting them underneath him. But that's one thing I'm really looking at for Kawhi is obviously how does he look from a physical standpoint in terms of burst, elevation on his shot, and I think so far he's looked pretty good. There was even one play in the Portland game where he turned the corner off a screen, and he hit the Jets pretty hard, fairly hard, and had a nice dime bounce pass to Ivica Zubac. So that showed me a little bit of burst there as well. So Kawhi Leonard, in that first sense, that's what I'm looking for. Second thing, the defense. And I think that the burst and quickness also goes hand in hand on the defensive end. His lateral ability. Will he be able to still guard elite players? If Luka Doncic is killing the Clippers in a game, can he still play defense on him the last 5 minutes? Don't switch. Kind of try to get over those screens. Hard hedge recover. And just be able to guard guys one-on-one when he has the opportunity to do so, or when guys try to go at him. I think that's going to be interesting to see if Kawhi Leonard can still play that elite defense that we're so accustomed to seeing and have been accustomed to seeing at spurts for the Clippers. And overall, he plays great defense, but it's really the one-on-one defense that I'm looking at more than anything. So those are the two things for Kawhi. It's his burst, his athleticism, and the second one is defense. And they can kind of go hand in hand. For Paul George, I think it's the aggression in terms of getting to the basket. Does he still have the ability to really blow past guys? He can do it better than Kawhi Leonard can at this stage. But can he really get past guys where he's getting easier looks at the rim because his guy is behind him because he's blown past him? He's obviously going to be going up against the help defender usually, maybe a rim protector. But if he can get past that initial defender and blow by them, that's going to make life so much easier for him. Because you got to respect Paul George's jump shot. So you got to be fairly close to him. You can't give him too much space. And that should give him the ability to get guys on his hip and finish strong at the rim. The thing about Paul George is he has gotten stronger, by the way. He looks really good. I saw him right up close at the forum. If you can check out my YouTube channel, you can see that interview with Jamie Maggio in front of the fans. But he's not like the most bully ball guy like a Giannis or a LeBron or even a Kawhi. He's more of a finesse player. But Paul George still has the ability to get the step on a guy, put his shoulder into them, and finish strong with contact. And when he goes up seeking that contact and not seeking the whistle, that's when the refs give him more, are more fair with him. And he gets treated like the star that he is and doesn't get no calls like he does when sometimes he can go up a little bit soft, go up looking for the foul. And I think that's one major thing I'm looking at, because when Paul George is aggressive, it changes his game so much. And when he can get some easier baskets, some free throws, really getting to the foul line a lot because he shoots such a good percentage from the line, it really changes everything for him. So that's one of the main things I'm looking at. And then I'm not expecting as much on defense from Kawhi, but Paul George, I really want to see a good defensive season from him. And that's not just in the passing lanes, which he was amazing last season, averaging over 2 steals a game. I want to see him also be able to stick in front of guys, sit down, and play great defense, because with the switch everything scheme, everybody is going to get their turn at certain one-on-one matchups. And Paul George needs to be able to stay in front and be the Paul George that we've been accustomed to as Clipper fans for a long time. If his defense isn't as sharp, that defeats the whole, we have two-way wings as our best players. That two-way part, it needs to be effort. It's not the skill that Paul George lacks in the defensive end or the lateral ability or that. It's the focus sometimes off the ball, and then although he's very good off the ball, honestly. He's really good in the passing lanes, but I noticed in the preseason games at times he was falling asleep. And he can fall asleep at times, as everybody can, but he needs to just be alert, and I want to see him be able to guard the best players as well. Shout out to one of my YouTube commenters. He said something about, I hope Paul George actually goes out and guards the best players to start games, before the screen is set, just to start possessions, because Terrence Mann's not starting. And Nico Batum, who you would probably put on those kind of players, is not going to start. And I wouldn't put Marcus Morris Sr. on them over a Paul George or a Kawhi. And you're definitely not going to see Kawhi Leonard guarding the best. Like, for example, first game, who's going to guard LeBron to start possessions? Obviously, the Clippers are going to switch a lot, but who's going to guard LeBron? I think it may be Marcus Morris, honestly, at this point. I think they're going to do that. I think Senior's not a terrible matchup for LeBron. He lacks a little bit of lateral ability, but LeBron's also not as quick as he once was. And Senior is a big body that he can't get bullied by LeBron. And that's one reason why he actually did a good job on him in the 2018 playoffs when he was a member of the Boston Celtics. I think that was Morris's defensive peak along those years. But that's my prediction for that. But overall, let's forget LeBron. I mean, let's say Devin Booker. I think ideally, Paul George, I think, should guard him to start the game. Because I think Senior he'll just get a step on him. Booker will get a step on him and pull for that mid-range, and it'll be like a bucket. That's just my prediction. But I would like to see Paul George. Again, defense is going to be one of the things I'm looking for every player, because I'm such a fiend for defense. And I think that the Clippers being a top 5 defensive team, which that should be a target this season, can change everything about them. I mean, defense wins championships. That's an age-old proverb right there. And it started with the 60s with Bill Russell and the Celtics, always leading the league in defensive rating and winning championships left and right. So the Clippers, they got to really make their mark on the defensive end. That's why they went out and got all these wings, and it starts with the 2 best players on the team, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But of course, to back up stars, you need a great supporting cast. And coming up, I'm going to be talking about the 2 things I'm looking for the rest of the starters, including the best bench in the league, in my opinion. Yes, yes. The MLB playoffs are underway, and if you want to place bets on those, you got to go to betonline.net. It's your fastest and easiest way to make all your bets that you need to do. And you can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game across so many different sports. Obviously, I just mentioned the MLB playoffs, but you also got the NBA season coming up. The NFL is in full swing. And even sports like MMA, boxing, golf, the next big UFC fight, place a bet on that on BetOnline. And, of course, the World Cup in Qatar that's coming up. You got to go to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Make sure to place your bets for the Clippers on opening night against the Lakers. Okay, as we go down the line, let's start with the remaining starters. And let's start with the 2 that were confirmed. Marcus Morris and Ivica Zubac. For Marcus Morris, the major thing, defense. Same thing. Is he going to be able, because let's say the Clippers roll out a lineup like this. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Nico Batum, Robert Covington, and Marcus Morris Sr. We saw a glimpse of that lineup in the Minnesota game. And Marcus Morris, if I'm the other team and I'm scheming, he's the weakest link, in my opinion, of those five defensively. So I would put him in the pick and roll to get him to switch on to my best player. If he can hold his own, it changes everything about Senior's season and the season that he can have. Because his offense has never been an issue for me. A lot of people think, oh, he doesn't really get easy shots. He takes a lot of tough shots. But he makes them, and he's as good at catch and shoot three-point shooter or just a three-point shooter on the team that the Clippers have. I mean, besides Luke Kennard, Marcus Morris Sr. is right there. And he's given the Clippers so many big scoring nights when they needed it, especially last season without all the stars. But defense is going to be the reason why he stays in games. And the reason why he's also taken out of games if he can't play it at a high level. And sometimes you saw him not play defense at a very high level last season. And that all comes down to mental focus. And one thing I noticed in the preseason from him was he was really sitting down in a stance and guarding guys. It's almost like he's listening to these podcasts and like, okay, you think I'm going to be a liability on defense that I got to get traded? I'm going to show you what's good. And so far, he has shown me a lot. And that's just the preseason. But the effort level, if you're playing that hard in the preseason, then I should believe that you're going to play that hard, if not harder, in the regular season. And Marcus Morris has held his own so far in the preseason defensively. That's just one-on-one perimeter, though. I think another thing about him, he's got to be alert off the ball. And one thing that I've noticed was a little weak from Senior the last 2 years is when he's rotating at the rim. Let's say a high pick and roll is set and they get the ball at the center, rolled into the basket. Zubac has been pulled out and he's the rotating man, the last line of defense. He sometimes doesn't even get off the ground and contest the shot. But with that burst he's been talking about that he has now because his knees feel good, and you saw it with that dunk he had against Minnesota, and he's been talking about, I want to dunk more. If he can deter some shots at the rim, and I'm not talking about sending shots, blocking shots or anything like that, but just being able to go up vertically and actually make a play, that's huge. That's really huge. So defense, of course, for Senior is one big thing. And then athleticism, the burst. Same thing with Kawhi Leonard. Will Senior be able to get easy baskets? Because, again, he lives off a tough shot diet. A lot of contested mid-ranges, contested threes. So if he can get some easy baskets, and obviously I'm going to be paying attention to the dunk meter, or the dunk count with Senior. I said it when he made that comment on Media Day, I haven't dunked like that recently. I was thinking, like, I can't even remember the last time Marcus dunked. But doing it in the preseason is a good sign. So we'll see how many dunks he has. The next guy, Ivica Zubac. The main thing with him, obviously, is also defense. He's not going to be able to switch everything, so just throw that out the window. He'll be able to switch on certain guys, but you're not going to see Zubac switching out to like the quickest guards on the perimeter. And I don't want him to either. But he needs to be able to hold his own in drop coverage, and if he needs to hard hedge and recover, do a good job of hedging, getting back to the big man. But it's mostly drop coverage with Zoo that they're going to run, and he needs to do a good job, even on lob threats. That's been one of his weaknesses. When they get a good lob threat on the other side, he has a little bit of trouble playing both the ball, showing on the ball handler for a second, so that he can take away a wide open mid-range or a floater, but also being able to get off the ground for a lob. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert used to kill him on that. But a big reason that was the case as well is because the Clippers didn't have as many long wings to get over those screens with Donovan Mitchell. So when Mitchell was coming off those screens, or when guys would come off those screens, it was like Zoo was playing two guys at once, and everybody would just get mad at Zubac. It's like, dude, he needs a little bit of help, resistance. One thing I noticed from watching the Boston Celtics in this playoffs is they had so much size that Al Horford could play drop coverage really well, outside of the finals, of course. But he could play drop coverage really well, especially Rob Williams, too, all throughout the playoffs. Because Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jalen, these guys, Grant Williams, were getting over screens well and in the rear view of the ball handler, so they have to worry about something. And that's where the length of the Clippers is going to be so big for Zubac. So Senior, Kawhi, Paul George, we're not switching everything in that starting five. We're not. Zubac is going to play drop coverage, and he needs to be able to stay on the floor and show people that he can't just get played off the floor. Everyone thinks Zubac is going to just get played off the floor in the playoffs. He needs to prove people wrong. And then my other thing I'm looking for with Zoo. Can he continue to develop that jump hook in the post where the Clippers can dump it down to him sometimes, especially on a mismatch, and say, Zoo, go get us a bucket? And I know what people are thinking, why would I want Zoo getting the Clippers a bucket when we have all these weapons? A good low post game is so valuable. I don't care what era of basketball it is. It's a size advantage. It forces you to get fouled a lot of the times. And if he's being guarded by a smaller guy, we've seen Zubac hit that right-handed jump hook over that left shoulder. And I want him to continue to develop that. And to do that, the Clippers need to trust him and empower him by throwing the ball to the big fella when the time is needed. So, the next guy, Reggie Jackson. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go with John Wall. First, his burst. Is it still there? That's passed. I mean, that was clear. Clear as day, he still has that burst. Not as much as Washington, obviously, which you wouldn't expect, but he is the quickest guy on the team with the ball. Period. The next thing with him, I could have said defense, but I don't want to get too redundant. Sacrifice. I want to see John Wall in a game with a Kawhi or with a Paul where he's not doing too much, where he's coming up the court, giving it to them to run pick and roll and spotting up. I want to see that even though he's got such a chip on his shoulder and he has such a point to prove, that he doesn't want to do too much. And one thing about John Wall, he did say that in the beginning of the games, I want to make life easier for Kawhi and Paul, let them play off the ball, rest a little bit, and then in the fourth quarter, they can do their thing. And you know teams are going to be switching everything, so that's going to force a lot of isolation, and there's no better ISO players in the Clips than Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But I think John Wall, one thing he's going to be huge for is when teams switch everything and force the Clippers into isolation, he's going to be great because he'll be able to blow by guys. I think one-on-one, he's going to still be able to get his in terms of getting downhill and getting 2 feet in the paint and then creating shots for people. So that's one thing I'm looking for with John. So mainly with him, it's sacrifice and burst, which I've already seen, but I obviously want to see it over the course of the season. And then there's Reggie Jackson. 2 things I'm looking for with him. Smarter shots and less dribbling. Make life easier for yourself. If he's in the starting unit, he shouldn't be handling the ball and pick and roll that much at all. Just very occasionally. But because I don't want him going full-on catch and shoot, he still needs a couple of isolations or a couple of pick and rolls to just get himself in rhythm because he's not just a catch and shoot player. And sometimes when he gets empowered to do those things or he does see shots fall, he ends up doing things that you're just like, whoa. But obviously when he does those whoa things, sometimes he can get a little carried away. So I want to see this season, Reggie Jackson has no excuse to be really inefficient. Last season, obviously, if you look at his true shooting percentage, it looks better than just looking at his raw field goal percentage because he does shoot a lot of threes. But he can do a lot without a lot of the tough shots he took last year because he's going to have much better players on the team. I mean, he had a lot of games where it was him and Marcus Morris Sr. were the leading creators in the Clippers. He's not going to be in those positions, even if Kawhi and Paul George are both out. He'll have Norman Powell, he'll have John Wall. So I want to see Reggie being smarter, less dilly-dallying on the ball, move the ball, be more of a true point guard, and don't be so much of a shot hunter. And then will he still play well enough to play late in games and still make big shots? Because here's the crazy part. Even though the Clippers have Kawhi and Paul George, I almost trust Reggie Jackson just as much for that last shot as those two. Because he's hit as many game winners as them for the Clippers. He had the one against Orlando. He had the one against Detroit. In Detroit. And then the Lakers one, obviously. We're skipping up the court. Oh, my God. Reggie Jackson, he's clutch. And I want to see if he can still make those big shots. And it's not about him making the big shots. It's him being able to play well enough to be in that game, in that closing lineup. And I don't think it'll be a thing where Reggie's always in the game to close. It's going to be, can he be in the game to close at all? Because the Clippers are so deep. And you'll have guys like John Wall and Norman Powell. So he's going to have to fight by playing well. And coming up, I'm going to end it off with Norman Powell, Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann, Robert Covington, and Nico Batum. Stick around, because those are going to be fun as well. All right. To close out, let's talk about Luke Kennard. Honestly, when it comes to him, there's really one thing I'm looking at. Defense. Because that's what everyone's going to say. He can't guard a lick. He can't defend at all. He's just this white guy. Well, if you've watched Clipper basketball consistently, you've noticed that Luke Kennard took a huge leap defensively last year. The first season, he wasn't great laterally. He wasn't very strong, so he was getting bullied by a lot of bigger guards and wings. But last season, you saw him hold his own and be a very solid defender. Very decent. Looks stronger, and his defensive IQ has gotten better. He knows his rotations, knows the coverages, knows where he needs to be, knows who he needs to switch on, who he doesn't need to switch on. And overall was just stronger. Put his chest out, take hits to the chest, and wouldn't just get, bumped away and not let guys create as much separation. So I really saw big leaps from Kennard. And if he can continue to take those leaps defensively, then look out the rest of the league. Because even though he's never going to be a defensive stopper, if he can be good enough to not get played off the floor like a lot of other NBA fans think he's going to be, then good luck, because he's lights out shooting the ball. One of the best in the world right now. That's not an exaggeration. You're about to see it again. From three, just shooting the ball, I don't know. Obviously, shooting, the whole, how do you look at comparing shooters is a conversation in itself, because it's like, do you value off the dribble shooting, turnaround shots, all these different things. But as far as just straight three-point shooting and catch and shoot, he's one of the best in the world. It's not even a debate. It's not even arguable, I should say. Norman Powell, similar things to John Wall, except I'm going defense with him because I've noticed some shaky moments from him laterally in terms of getting blown by very easily. He needs to be more locked in, especially if he wants to be an all-star like he said. That's not going to happen in my opinion, but if he wants to just be a huge contributor to this championship run that the Clippers are looking to make, he needs to be a great laterally and be able to switch on to multiple positions and hold his own. So I'm looking at that big time because I didn't get to really see it last year. It was only a couple of games the Clippers had him. And then sacrifice. He can't shot hunt so much too or play makes hunt so much too. He's going to be coming off the bench unless Kawhi and Paul load manage games. So mostly he's going to be coming off the bench. And I think he can be in the sixth man of the year discussion. He just needs to buy in, but also let Reggie Jackson or John Wall, whoever's partnered up with him in that second unit, handle the ball as well. It can't just be him every single time. And I think he knows that. But I want to see that sacrifice because even though he played amazing in the last preseason game against Denver, 34 points, in that game against Portland, he was gunning because I think he felt like John Wall was handling the ball a lot. And when he got the ball, he was like, I'm trying to put him up there. So that's Norman. And then Luke Kennard. I'm sorry, I already said Luke Kennard. Terrence Mann, it's actually the opposite. Offense. I want to see him be able to hit that mid-range coming off screens in the pick and roll. He needs to improve on his shot making this season. I want to see him take a leap on that because other than that, I mean, he does improve every season a little bit, but I thought he would take a slightly bigger leap last season. I think he started out slow and then he got better as the season went on. And then, of course, the obvious thing he needs to continue to get better at is his spot-up three-point shooting. I mean, he loves that right corner, that left corner, especially in Game 6 against the Jazz. But spot-up shooting and just overall offense, mainly his ability to hit the mid-range shot coming off screens and just making shots, literally just putting the ball in the basket because he does all the other little things. And speaking of a guy who does all the other little things, Nico Batum. Two things I'm looking for with him. Laterally, he's getting older. Can he still move and guard the elite players on other teams? Because, as I said, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are not going to be always guarding those dudes. I want to see if Nico can still stick with them. I have no doubts about his three-point shooting and his shot-making ability. So I honestly don't know if I have anything else with Nico. I think it really comes down to just, can he still stick laterally with those kind of players? And then Robert Covington. What I'm looking for with him is can he take him also lateral movement? Because I've heard I noticed he's a better help defender and rotator than an on-ball, one-on-one defender. But I still want to see his ability on the ball because if teams switch everything, or when the Clippers switch everything, which they will be doing a lot, he has to hold his own as well. That's the thing about switch everything. Everybody needs to be able to guard one-on-one at a decent level. And I think Robert Covington definitely can guard at a decent level. But can he guard the elites? The quick guards have been known to get the step on him. So I want to see how well he is laterally, just like Nico Batum. And then as far as my other key with Rocco, taking smarter threes. He has a tendency to take right when he catches the ball behind the three-point line, put it up, even if he's not open. I don't think we need all those. And I want him to continue to shoot a great percentage. I mean, he was shooting an insane percentage last season when he came to the Clippers, over 40%. If he shoots 37% or more, that would be incredible, but he needs to take smart shots. So that's my point on Rocco. And yeah, I think that's everybody. So let me know what you think. Let me know what are two things you are looking for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the YouTube comment. Remember to subscribe. It's the fastest way to grow the show. And let's get us up to 900 subscribers. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod if you want to find me. And of course, my YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more Clipper content. Thanks for joining me. And you already know the saying, go Clippers.